Tapu, Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Haru Nefher. This is Kasank Ma Keparu with another broadcast for you. In this broadcast, I want to talk about how they stripped her naked. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. And if it's your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live or when I upload recorded videos. I also have free ebooks. If you're interested in learning more about my spiritual practice and teachings, you can just click on the links below and download the ebooks right away and start reading them. They're free and they're in depth, so you really get a well-rounded view of, the Kemetic spirituality or religion, and also about manufacturing and creating your own reality. Also, if you're not already a member, please consider supporting us on Patreon. A lot of good stuff happening there. As a supporter, you have access to not just a wealth of content, but we have videos, instructional videos, hypnosis videos on how to lose weight, attract wealth, attract money, attract a mate, or how about how to invoke a spirit, or how to communicate with interdimensional beings. All that good stuff. And you can become a supporter for just as little as $1 or $20 a month. There's no obligation. You can cancel at any time if you don't like it, but I'm sure you will love it. And last but not least, I would love for you to share this video with family and friends so we can get this revolution started and change the vibrational frequency of the planet, one that is more in alignment with Ma'at. So, Haru Nefer, this is going to be a very interesting talk, and I hope that it doesn't become a long one. But I want to really get down to the meat and potatoes of the subject matter here, which is going a little bit deeper into the idea of magic. But before I do that, I want to let all of you know that I do have weekly and bi-weekly classes, or I call them sometimes boot camps here. So if you're interested in attending, just reach out to me and we can talk about, having you fly down and attending a weekend session where you'll get instruction from me in a very small group setting. And it's a wonderful type of experience because not only will you get training from me and see my pretty face live, but I go really deep into the teachings. And you'll also have fellowship with other individuals that you'll be working with, and you'll get a better understanding. And it's very condensed, so you get a lot packed into the experience. However, if you're not able to fly down and attend our weekend sessions, there is the reality manifestation program that we're re-offering again for those who want to learn remotely. And what you'll need to do if you want to register for the program is simply going to engineeryourreality.com. Let me share my screen, see if I can find the site. All right, here we go. Let's see what we got here. All right, so Engineer Your Reality. And basically this gives you a really good overview of what's offered in the program, what the spiritual teachings are about, and exactly what you get, and you'll have an opportunity to sign up. So go to engineeryourreality.com and sign up. Take your spiritual journey to the next level. And with that, I want to talk a little bit more about that to get into some details. You see, one of the things that we really need to understand, and this is going to bridge nicely into the topic of today's broadcast. There are many individuals who have read a lot of books, the Kemetic Book of the Dead, which is really called the Book of Coming Forth by Day and by Night by Wallace Budge. They've read the Metu Neter, and they're very good intellectually at comprehending some of the context, the content, and put it in the right context. But the problem that we have is that, and I've said this time and time again, when you read books about those historical time periods, ancient Kemet, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, ancient Africa, ancient Chinese culture, what has been done on a global level, a global systematic level, was to strip it naked, to take it away, take from that magic. And if I can go back to my journey into studying Japanese black magic, because when I started studying it, I loved it. I thought it was very powerful. But when I had went to study with one of the most prominent and certified instructors under the Grand Master, come to find out he had a change of heart, had a revelation, and he, instead of him really taking the studies further, because the Grand Master certified him, he was born again and became a Christian. And with that, he looked at the whole application and practice of the magic and stripped out what he thought was, in his words, demonic. So the practice of one of the most important aspects of it was kujikiri, and he took that away, and he didn't want to teach that. And you'll find that a lot. Um, as I said before, when you're studying these ancient cultures, the one thing you don't really get into is the magical aspect to it. Now, historians will tell you because it's superstitious, because it doesn't work, there's no real world application to it, and that we are now a linear, evolved culture to where we don't believe in such superstitions, but that's a lie. And the reason why these things were stripped naked of magic was to prevent the mass of the population on the planet from becoming empowered. You see, let us take a look. Let's understand this. Let's look at it from what I call, and you've heard me say this a number of times, the space-time continuum, meaning there is a line, a trajectory that we were on as a planet, as a population. And instead of us going in that direction, it was interrupted by the global elite because they wanted to take control of the planet. And to do so, they had to rob us of our power of magic. And then what they would do was they would use that magic themselves to imprison the planet. This is why you'll find, if you look through history, it's replete with the same thing. You'll see it, scenarios happening throughout history. What am I referring to? I'm referring to either libraries of high occult knowledge were burned down, or suddenly the papyruses were missing, as in the case of the Library of Alexandria, it was burned down. Let's go to Europe, the Middle Ages, where they had, if you were a witch, you were burned at the stake, where the Christians persecuted non-Western religions. You see, this is all planned. They planned to do this because they could not have the mass of the population practicing magic, which would remove them from their seat of power, the ruling elite. So, what am I saying? When you have these individuals who come along who claim to have such high knowledge of Kemetic spirituality, and I like to use that term spirituality and not religion, they don't touch on the real aspect of power. They'll get into Kemet was matrilineal. Kemet had a stable political system. But when you start to get into the magical aspects to it, then it gets kind of shady. And then they get into an area where they don't know what they're talking about. See, if you understand anything about the solar system and black holes, when you are going to plunge into a black hole, the center of it is called a singularity. And at that point, most modern physicists say it, we don't understand or know what happens there. the laws as we understand them of physics break down, and that the only way to understand what happens in this center black hole, you probably have to create a whole new science to categorize that and understand it. And Egyptology so happens to be a science. It's its own field of study. Isn't that interesting? You don't go to Europe and find Europology. You don't come to America and find America ecology or whatever. Why is it that Egyptology has its own field of study? But more importantly, we have to go back and trace what occurred. And we see, as I said before, throughout history, the same scenario played over and over again. The Vatican, if you go to the basement, the catacombs of the Vaticans, they store a massive library there. And you and I cannot get access to it. And those who are privileged to get access to it have to go through all types of security measures. You cannot take the books out, they stay there. You cannot take cameras, you cannot write down things. Why? The Vatican also owns one of the most powerful telescopes on the planet. You or I can't get access to that. We cannot just go up there and point that at Alpha Centauri or wherever and then look and see a new solar system. But why? You see, the ruling elite has to make sure that you are never, ever to come into the realization of who you really are, which is God man and God woman. That is very dangerous to them. And the problem that we're having is we have these well-meaning individuals who come along and they make the matters worse by teaching what they call as Kemetic spirituality, Kemetic philosophy. But when you get down to the essence of the occult science, they have no clue. And that is the one thing that you do need right now. You don't need a great understanding of the political arrangement of Kemet. I don't know how many times I've heard the discussion through lectures or through just regular discourses about Akhenaten and how he almost he demilitarized Kemet. He had his exodus to have his followers come with him and worship Aten, the great Aten. But see, that's digestible. We understand that. That's base. That's a whole ideological battle that happened in Kemet, and they were able to resolve that by getting rid of Akhenaten and his whole lineage. The priesthood did that, but we don't need that. We need the occult wisdom and knowledge where the true power is, and we keep missing the mark. And it's a very, very complicated field of study because it's full of trick bags. And let me explain this to you. You have these individuals who come along, like Gaia, and they're offering, you can go and watch their movies. They do a lot of videos on Kemet. And one of the things they always tend to lean toward is that Egypt, the way they were able to build the pyramids, because they know when you study Egypt, you have to come to the conclusion that it was a very, very advanced civilization. And I'm talking about technological wise, even more advanced than where we are now. That's hard for people to grasp and understand. Now, remember what they're exposing you to, the hieroglyphics, the images, those are for public consumption. When they come across something that's profound, such as how the pyramids were built, that information is hidden. You'll never see it. And believe you me, our ancestors left a record of how they built the pyramids. It was no mystery. But you see, the ruling elite got there first with their so-called Egyptologists and robbed the tombs and took the information right to the Vatican. put it in the basement where you or I would never have access to it, and they put out the media propaganda. Well, the ancient Egyptians never left a record of how they built the pyramids. These people were very detailed in terms of their history, their lineage. Why would they not leave that information? Why would that suddenly disappear? Again, we look at history, we'll see that every now and then there were these periods of when they robbed libraries, persecuted individuals practicing occult. Europe, to even say that the earth was round or and that the earth wasn't the center of the universe you would be they would kill you. Why though? Why? So anyway, I don't want to get too far off track of what I'm trying to say, but you have to understand that the real power lies in that. And those individuals out there who are teaching from an intellectual perspective are missing the mark. This is the conundrum I faced when I was studying. See, I studied with a lot of the, I hate to use the term, so-called master teachers. I went to their homes, I visited their libraries, and even then, as an initiate, and that's what I was at that time learning, I was smart enough to know that we were being set up for failure. And I actually told them. I called up Dr. Ben, called up Dr. Clark. So I wholeheartedly support you, but there's something fundamentally wrong in what we're doing, and it's all going to collapse. I said you are teaching something from a left brain perspective, meaning you're teaching facts, dates, events. Where is the occultism? Where is the magic? It's not there. And I said, if you put this information out devoid of that, you're going to get shady people, criminals who will come into the fold and pretend to be gurus on this knowledge. But anyway, so what the ruling elite did in order to take over the planet was to strip or rob Africa, which the real name is Akabulan, of its occult knowledge. Now, many people will argue, well, when they brought the slaves when they brought the Africans to the New World to become slaves, they robbed them of their religion. They've robbed them of their names. They robbed them of their culture. They always say that. And I said, but listen, you're not touching upon the real thing that they were stripped of. And that was an understanding of their divinity, an understanding of the power that resides within them. I had a talk with this young girl. Her and I talked for a long time. And, she was pointing out that, during slavery, they would strip the women, rape them, and then put them up for sale in auctions, bare naked. And which horrible thing. And those who have committed those acts will pay a price. And I'll talk about that in a later video on karma. But what you have to understand is that Akebuland, or Africa, we refer to as the, Mother Africa, was also raped and stripped of the true essence of who she was. Yeah, they went in there and they took the natural resources, the gold, the silver, yeah, okay, we know that. But there was something going on in Africa that made it the mecca of the planet, the zenith of civilization. That's what we've got to look at. And I don't mean just the physical representation of things like, oh, they built the pyramids and this and that. No, 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 I understand that. But I'm talking about something deeper besides architectural engineering and stuff like that, which is great accomplishments. but there's something else we need to look at that we're missing the mark on, and that's really where I think we're falling short of. We've got this down. We know the dates, we know the names, we can recite Pharaoh so and so, you know, Tutmosis this, that, this, but I'm like, well, okay, but and as I said before, it's full of trickbacks. It's very convoluted because you have these channels or these outlets or let's say platforms like Gaia that come along and that they offer these videos. And as I was saying before, one of the things they leaned toward was that ancient Egypt was heavily, well, I shouldn't say influenced, but the reason that they were able to build the pyramids is because they had ET contact. Well, no, let me get more precise. Aliens gave them the knowledge to build the pyramids. That's what their hypothesis is. But what I'm saying in terms of trick bags is it's partly true, and a half truth is a lie. Yes, they did have ET contact, but it wasn't the extraterrestrials that gave them knowledge to build the pyramids. Because we study how Egypt came to be, we can clearly see that genius thinking comes from the integration of the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. And that's who the Kemetic people were. They were integrated brain thinkers. So they were ripe for creating wonders of the world. So these platforms like Gaia are putting out disinformation, and it muddies the water and it makes it look bad, the things that they say and do. And then the way that we limit ourselves and hamper ourselves from our own freedom from oppression is that we get caught up in trivial things that make no sense whatsoever. We'll start arguing, well, were the Kemetic people white or black? Well, did women have more prominent role in ancient Kemet than men? Oh, do you, Kisak, endorse interracial relationships? How do we? And I'm like, we're talking about everything under the sun except the real issue that can empower us. That the woman has been stripped naked, put up for auction, and is powerless now. And we're talking about useless things and we're debating on useless topics. You understand? The only thing that's going to get you out of your situation you're in now is your power. It's you. And that's the only thing at the end of the day you can rely on. These ridiculous discussions that divert your attention. And you'll see that social media is infested with these individuals talking about these very trivial things, but never want to get to the source. So when I was talking to this young lady, and we were talking about evolution and what we were basically talking about, and I wrote a little article about this, which I will publish on Patreon. And she was like, well, black women they can produce all races. The black woman's womb can produce Chinese, Asian, I don't know, Latino, whatever. And basically I told her, no, that's not true. And then I said, and it's a stupid argument. It's something I don't want to even get into because that's not really what we should be talking about. And you'll find that a lot is that you'll see where those individuals who call themselves Kemetians or studying ancient Kemet, in order to counteract racism, they became racist. And they're operating from the same playbook. And it's really disgusting. So I want you to understand that, and don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that reading up on the dates, the historical names and the times isn't important. It is important, but that should not supersede an understanding of your power and who you are and what you are capable of. You have been stripped naked, as the I-ching tells us. You gave up your magic tortoise. You are powerless now. You're not supposed to be walking around and not controlling reality. You're not supposed to be walking around and not use your third eye. You're not supposed to be walking around and not communicate with spirits and interdimensional beings. For the ancient Kemetic people, the noble men and women, the peasants, the elite, the hierarchy, this was common to them. Communicating with the dead was common to them. It was nothing like worthy of its own particular field of study called the paranormal. This was something that they did. And in fact, when you when I went to priesthood, the one thing that I picked up on very quickly was it wasn't a linear learning institution. They incorporated how learning was done in ancient Kemet. What do I mean by that? When I got into priesthood, you don't you don't get a book which really details, all right, this year you can be covering this subject matter and this subject matter and then this and that and this and this is the ceremony and this is the ritual. You didn't get any of that. You learned through osmosis, and that's how the ancient Kemetic people learned. Totally different way of life. So let me go back to what I was saying. You would see these things, the appearance of a spirit, individuals manifesting beings from different dimensions. You would visually see these things, and it wouldn't disrupt you. You wouldn't be like, oh my God, look what's going on there, because it was common. The way you are now, our ancestors would look at as though you were like white bread. You're supposed to be wheat, but through the bleaching process, stripped out all the vitamins and the nutrients. Everything that made you such a powerful being has been taken away from you, and you don't even know it. You don't even know it. You're not supposed to be walking around worried how are you going to pay next month's rent. You're supposed to be going, oh yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to vibrationally shift to this frequency, which will attract the wealth I need to pay the rent. You're not supposed to be worrying about, hey, listen, I haven't found the right one for me. I'm looking for a good man like Kasak, but they don't seem to be around. No, you're supposed to be able to magically manifest the man you want. You're not supposed to be getting into altercations with people. You just excuse yourself from the situation and manifest a different person. You don't get along with your friend? That's okay. Manifest a different friend. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And the fact that you're not doing it and not worried about it is very concerning, because here we are, and we're complaining about Trump. We're complaining about our government. We're complaining about racism. We're complaining about sexism. We're complaining that the rich get richer. All the while, you have the power to change that. I have people call me for consultations, and they're like, Kasag, I'm going through this problem with my son. He's very rebellious. He won't listen to me. And I'm like, okay, so manifest a new kid. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. Manifest a new kid. Have you not been listening to my videos? Don't you understand the power you have? It doesn't register. It just doesn't register. All right, let's get down to details, right? Let's get down to the real meat and potatoes. Let me explain something to you. Let's go back to the 100 monkey principle, the law of Ma'at, the interdependence, the interrelationship between all things. The experiment I did with the pendulum, how things sync. Understand this. If you do not use your power, your magical power, that communicates a vibrational frequency into the ether, or we can call it a pendulum. And that pendulum will download that information to other people. Stop using your power. Don't use your power. And then what you get is that it spreads like a virus throughout the planet, where people now don't even think about magic, don't even think about using their power. I remember I was talking to a journalist once, and it was so like profound what he said. And he was talking about, well, when you're a young journalist, you'll bring to your editor or you'll bring to the head of the paper a great idea, maybe to expose sweatshops in Africa or something like that. And then what you'll find is the editor will say, kill it. We're not running that story. And then he says, then you get to the next level, the final level, where the idea to run the story never comes to you in the first place, because you've already been trained that this story idea is not going to fly. They're not going to print it. So you don't even bother to bring it to your editor or whatever. So now, there was a time maybe you thought about using your magical power, but now because that energy and that vibration have taken shape and sprung to life as an egregore or a pendulum, now you don't even think about the fact that you have these powers. You don't think about even using them. The emperor has no clothes. You're naked. You're stripped naked. And when this young woman, her little fine, sexy self, anyway, um, was talking to me, and she had some knowledge. I give you, she was kicking the science of biology and stuff. But I said, you're naked. You're naked. You're kicking the science, but you don't know magic. So therefore, we're back to square one. How do you propose we get out of the situation we're in? No answer. No answer. None. I can give you an answer, and I tell people this all the time. I really don't get pissed off, but I'll use this for the sake of facilitating this conversation. And I'll say, piss me off. And one day you're going to come home and you're going to find a demon in your apartment. And it's going to, excuse my French, fuck you up. I say, if you really piss me off, I got two witches that work with me, and we'll work together and we'll cast a spell, one that you won't believe, and you'll never think about messing with me again. That's power. That's what you should do. Don't be up there with these political rallies protesting. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're God. Work your magic. Get rid of whoever's in office if you don't like them. Manifest a new senator. Manifest a new president. You understand? I know it's challenging for most of you to accept this fact, but it is a fact and it is true. And if you don't believe me, go to the oracles, ask God. Say, God, am I God? And see the answer. But see, we get into this mode where we like to play victim. We have the victim mentality. And we're comfortable with that because it doesn't require any work. Because when I say that you're a God, then all of a sudden that brings accountability and responsibility. What do they tell Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility, or something like that? And most of you don't want to accept responsibility. That's something that bad that happened to your life. You actually manifested that. That's how powerful you are. You manifested that. Going back to what I was saying before about reading these books, these history books. And what you will find is that they have stripped them of magic, any references to magic or any historical accounts of where these figures used magic. They don't want to place that idea in your mind, so they strip it naked. Okay? Now, I want you to understand something. Our ancestors would not just write it in the book or books, they were very fond of what we would call as puns. And when they would tell their stories, it would be laced with another story and another story. And you would read it and get a real greater depth and breadth as to what they were trying to communicate. And if you see now in the lyrics of many of these rappers, they're using puns. That's naturally baked into the right brain. Story within a story within a story. Now, the use of the puns was a powerful magical application. That's why they used it. That's why they were fond of it. Because when you used a pun, not only were you understanding the story on the first level, but you were gaining a deeper knowledge of other things. Because in studying the one thing, you would also study other things. And this would lead to what we call the unified field theory, one theory that explains everything. And this is how we taught our children. And that's how they became geniuses, because we would lace the curriculum or the lessons with puns, a story within a story. That's how you create a multi-genius. Going down different levels, understanding things from different aspects. Well, let me put it into a concrete example. The ancient Chinese, when they came up with their 5 principles, when water, what is water? We know water is H2O, but it also can refer to the spirit, the subconscious mind. It can also refer to the female principle, the yin. Water, the symbol of the water, can also be analogous to vibration, the symbol of the squiggly lines. When a person is watery, what does that mean? They mesh well with others. When a person is earthy, that means they're very stiff, they're hard, difficult maybe to get along with, immovable, stubborn headed. See, these principles, which are analogies, helped us not only understand the one thing we were studying, but helped us to understand many, many different things. This is why our ancestors said, as above, so below. Now, here's where it gets really good. I also used a pun and analogy to when I was saying Mother Africa being stripped as the same thing as the young female I was talking about being stripped naked of her power. When you understand things on the multi-layer or when you understand things from an analogous perspective, then you start to understand the interdependence and interrelationship between all things and how they connect to one another. And that leads us back to cosmology. Now, when you read the occult works of the great priests and priestesses, and you read and you don't understand these things, and you're like, I don't really, I mean, if you read the I-ching, it's not an easy read. You got parables, you got analogies, you get the puns, all that's there. Because it's communicating to the right hemisphere of the brain. It's activating the right hemisphere of the brain. There's a reason why the Metu Neter, the hieroglyphics, you'll always see them depicted in action. They're not just standing there. Because when you depict something in action, it forces the right hemisphere of the brain to think, to say, what were they about to do? When you start to make those connections and boil those things down, you start to understand what I call as the template reality. What is a template reality? The template reality is an archetypal formula full of archetypes that are the basis of the creation of everything in our universe. If you understand the template reality and the archetypes that are used, then you can manipulate reality from the source. And this is the basic of the Hermetic principles and the basis of how magic works. The Hermetic principle of like attracts like. If I give you a ritual to perform and I say to you, okay, you're having troubles with your mate. Well, I want you to take these two ribbons and tie them in a knot. And that symbolizes you two being joined forever. That one act that you're performing is analogous to a joining and a tying together of couples. And that appeals to the right hemisphere of the brain. But this is a forgotten science. See, we don't understand the etheric realm and what's there. We know the Akashic records is there, right? But there's so much more. There's a template reality. There's other dimensions with other beings. And if we can tap into that, we become masters of the universe. But if all we do is focus on left brain thinking, then we become polarized in concrete thinking. And all that we can see is what is before us, or that which we can see, hear, feel, and taste. And that's all we think is reality. It's not. It's not. When you see the great priests and priestesses making predictions in their scriptures, whatever you want to call it, quatrains, Nostradamus. People were like, well, why does he write these quatrains in such very complicated language where it's difficult to understand? Because he was writing. Some say, oh, well, he was writing so that the religious institutions at the time wouldn't be able to decipher it. So, because if they did, they would realize what he's doing and imprison him. No, they were schooled on analogous thinking or puns or story within the story. They understood that type of occult writing. But he wrote that way because that is how you gain access to the future through the right hemisphere of the brain. The right hemisphere of the brain thinks abstractly. So you have to start looking at things as analogies. One thing is a symbol for another thing, and another thing, and another thing. And you're building a greater understanding of how things work in the universe, and you become a genius. The problem that we've gotten into is that the ruling elite has duped us into thinking that concrete thinking is the only way to go. It is all that in a bag of chips, and that's a lie. Concrete thinking is the very reason why you can a man looks at a woman's naked body and he has lustful thoughts. He cannot see beyond the concrete. In fact, in ancient times, there were women that would come to you. And remember, we didn't look at the body as sinful and say, I will have sex with you. And this will be part of a ritual for sex magic so that you can accomplish your objective and your goal. And this was not looked upon as, oh my God, he's hired a call girl, a hooker, a prostitute. No, this was looked at as a very spiritual act that you were engaged in. And she was helping you to realize your divinity. In the same way, when we would kill animals, we would first thank them for them giving their lives and sacrificing their lives so that we may live. A respect for those creatures. This this Western society and Western man doesn't have respect for anything. You know why? Because they don't understand the interdependence, interrelationship between all things. Because when you cannot think abstractly, and all you can think is concrete, you cannot see how someone relates to you beyond the concrete. See, they only seek to separate because they see color, race, but they miss the mark because they don't think abstractly and say, well, beyond the fact that he's Asian and I'm white, we're both consciousness and we share the same consciousness. And I have to be careful of what I do to him because that would directly impact me. Very good question, Alexander. Very good question. How do you do magic? Our people have been Willie lynched for so many years. So, Willie Lynch is a pendulum, it's an ergogore. That's what that is. For those of you who are not familiar with Willie Lynch, it was a paper that was supposed to be written and by a gentleman named Willie Lynch, where it talked about programming the mindset of African people to accept their subjugation. And you can Google it and you'll see the paper. And basically, what he was theorizing in a number of generations, they would accept their oppression without question and even fight to maintain their enslavement, which is true. And Willie Lynch is a false document, but the principles are sound. Remember, I told you it's all full of trick bags. So the way that you deal with that is you just do exactly the same thing and reverse it. Do exactly the same thing and reverse it. Use the magic against them. Now, there are a number of ways you can do it because when you start to apply magic from a high magical perspective, there can be repercussions. It could affect your karma. So you have to decide, will I enact this magic? Or let's say, for example, call upon the warrior god Haruka, who's the god of justice, enforcing justice actually. And he will right the wrong. But you're going to have to pay a price for that. Or will you say, I will invoke Ma'at to bring balance so that those who are doing wrong will see the error of their ways and have a change of heart. And in doing that, you won't hurt your karma. So there's two different paths you get to choose, whatever one you think will work for you. This is why I tell people you can't just create a revolution, go out there because it's going to affect you. It's going to rebound you. Might doesn't make right. So we have to get back to understanding that yes, it's great to read about our history. It's great to read about historical facts, dates, names. It's great to be educated and informed of these things, but don't miss the mark. You've got to go in there and do your research and resurrect the information of the magic, the occultism, the power that we had. Do not codify that as saying spirituality, religion. You can't dumb it down to that. You really can't. This is why I hate using the term religion. It's been so perverted by Western man and woman because they think they can commit all kinds of evils 6 days of the week, and on the seventh day go to church and they'll be redeemed. It doesn't work that way. I wish it were. So The thing that I always keep in mind is that yes, you want to celebrate your heritage, yes, you want to celebrate your culture, but you have to also understand that this world primarily operates on occult power. They're going to parade in front of you. Oh, we operate by a political system. Oh, we operate by the World Bank and financial institutions. That's poppycock. That's a deflection. That's not how they work. Hollywood would be like, and I get these idiots that come and say, well, Hollywood is programming the people through media outlets and through the movies. It's subliminal seduction they're pumping out to you. And I'm like, well, yeah, yeah, to a degree, but you have to also understand that you've already been brainwashed. So what are you worried about? Go see the movie. You understand? They're concerned about, oh, I don't want to see that movie because it has all these subliminal messages. Oh, please, you've been brainwashed. You've been stripped naked. You are Willie lynched. You are going along with your own enslavement. In fact, you're asking for more. That's how brainwashed you are. Because if you weren't brainwashed, you'd be using your own occult power to do some damage to the ruling elite and to the established order, which is what you're supposed to be doing. And now what they've got baked into the revolutionary movement is when you start talking about that, they come along and say, "Oh, don't get into all that mystical Kundalini stuff," you know. And they're only, and I'm like, well, that mystical Kundalini stuff is also part of your heritage and your history, just as much as the historical dates and times and figures. You can't separate them, which is why I had a problem with my teacher when I went to study the Japanese black magic of him stripping it of the power of Kujikiri. So the test, if your guru or teacher is legitimate, it's just ask them to show them, to give you a demonstration of their power. I mean, this is why you have these nincompoops out there. You'll have, and I hate to name names or say things, but they sit there on these panels and on TV, and they talk from a perspective of highly educated, sanctioned by the established order, a part of the upper echelon of the scholars. But you don't know anything. It doesn't, let me explain something. It doesn't take great effort for you to go to college and get a master's degree or a PhD. You think it does, but it doesn't. Really. Because when you compare that to the ability to invoke a spirit that will go out there and fight on your behalf to bring about justice, that's hard. That is not easy. But when you're studying and they're asking you just to regurgitate the information that you read, that's not difficult, to be honest with you. Now, I'm not, I don't want to kind of like make it sound too simple because when you get into certain subjects of quantum mechanics, it can be a little complicated. But what I'm telling you that is that their system is based upon the transfer of information. That's all it is. You're just feeding back to them what they've given you. That's not learning. That's not how you produce geniuses. See, the one thing they don't teach you is what you should be learning, and that is how to think. What are the intelligences that reside within you, and how do I nurture those intelligences and empower them and awaken them so that whatever field I choose to go into, I can be a genius in that field or I can be very proficient. They don't know how to do that because they themselves have been stripped of that knowledge because it was never passed on to them by the ruling elite. But the ruling elite can teach it to you if you are become a part of their secret society. If you study films like Star Wars, for example, what they pump out to the masses is that, oh yeah, we had a casting call, and you know, Daisy Ridley turned out to be the best actress. No, she went to an occult school in England, which is the heart of of European occultism, where Aleister Crowley studied and learned. These people aren't getting these roles because they're talented. They're getting these roles because they were bred and they were groomed from the very beginning. They have occult understanding and occult knowledge. Therefore, they are allowed at a certain level to come in to society and be used and manipulated. It's all a chess game they're playing. See, there's one side they need to show to you, the public, to make it seem like everything's okay. We live in a democratic society. We live in a free world. Rah, rah, United States, America, a great country. But behind the scenes, there's corruption, there's satanic rituals, things that you don't want to see. So the only way you're going to be able to deal and contend with that and fight that is by coming into an awakening of yourself. I asked my ancestors, how the hell do I fight something so evil? And my ancestors said, become the light that shines in the darkness and illuminates the way for others to come. Nikki, thank you so much for the donation. Much love to you. Namaste. And in closing, I want to thank all the Magi's in the chat room for jumping in. And I hope this bit of information resonates with you so that you have a greater understanding of what you have to do. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for our future generations. We're fighting for the alternate versions of ourselves in other dimensions, because the knowledge that you possess and you learn, you exchange with your other self living in a parallel reality. Yes, it's true. So you can help your other self that's going through some trials and tribulations. See, that was weird. So see, the information is transferred through dimensions, whether you realize it or not. This is why you can be walking around and have a thought that just hits you, and you're like, where did that thought come from? And that thought helps you to get out of a situation or to solve a problem. And once you become really, let me explain this in closing. So that, and if anytime you doubt anything I'm saying, just go to the Oracle, do an Oracle reading. I'm not saying I'm perfect. So that's why I'm saying go to the Oracle. You see, our ancestors, especially our Chinese ancestors, were schooled, like I said before, in the use of puns and the archetypes. Symbology, let's call it symbology. You're walking around your everyday life and you don't realize that there are these beings that are trying to communicate with you. And they're communicating with you through omens, but you can't read the signs because you haven't been schooled on that. And the signs are appearing, all over you. And the best that you can read is when you see 1111. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows what that is, you know. But there are many more signs through symbols, synchronicities that they're trying to communicate to you, but you don't have an understanding of it because you've been raised in a society that hasn't taught you that part of occultism. You understand? So these things can be directly in front of you and you'll never realize it. Because, when you ask God for assistance, there's always a reply. Maybe not from God, maybe from your ancestors. maybe from your alternate self in a different parallel reality. But the answer does come. The only question is, there's a knock at the door. Is anyone home? Are you there? Are you open and receptive? Can you read the met to net to the symbolism? And if you can't, you miss it. You miss the opportunity. So I want to thank you all again for tuning in. And this is Kasak Ma Keparu, son of Ma'at and Tuti. Ma'at is a beautiful goddess, Heteru. To my next broadcast, Amun Ra.